Welcome everybody to CEU Executive MBA Budapest, Tirana, Zagreb Open Day. My name is Thomas Lamel. I'm the Senior Program Manager of the CEU Executive MBA, and I will guide you through this evening. So what to expect tonight? First, I'm going to start with a program presentation about the unique Executive MBA at CEU. The second part is where you can meet current participants. And after that, you will have the chance for a Q&A session. Please feel free to shoot in your questions for the Q&A session in the chat box or via direct messaging. I will collect those messages for the Q&A session thereafter. And the highlight of this evening is the keynote presentation by Professor Yusuf Akbar on Cold War 2.0, how will it affect business? So let's get started with the program presentation about CEU Executive MBA. So the problem you're facing these days right now is the question, is an MBA still worth it? Because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we are in times of uncertainty, to put it mildly, and fundamental transformations in the world in a century. In 2008, we've seen a big financial crisis. In 2020, we've witnessed the biggest pandemic in over a century. And today we are witnessing the biggest war in Europe since World War II. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place. Some of them are positive, and some of them are pretty dangerous, to be frankly. And the key question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and uncertain environment? And the obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? We have seen an explosion of online education over the last 2 years, and I'll show you why we believe our MBA is still worth it. So if you're interested in further education, you usually start reaching out for the stars, you know, the best business schools in the world, the leading business schools out there, mostly located in the US. And what you tend to find is that these business schools offer a very differentiated mission-driven MBA curriculum, which means they offer a certain perspective, they offer a certain expertise and a certain mission. Another advantage of these leading business schools is that they offer global faculty with top credentials. Their professors, their faculty members come from around the world, and so does the international student body at these universities. Another big advantage of American universities or leading business schools is that they offer a specific campus experience that we know from student movies from the US, because a university is more than just a building. It's more than just a house that provides education. It creates a sense of belonging. It creates a community as well. But these leading business schools come with a disadvantage, and a major disadvantage is tuition, because the best business schools out there cost 120,000 euro or even more. And in addition to that, you would need to add up expenses like traveling, accommodation, housing, etc. Another disadvantage of these programs, mostly part-time and full-time programs at these business schools, is that you're out of the job for at least a year. Some programs require you to be absent from your job for even 2 years, which is another financial burden, because you cannot combine job in a full-time format and study life. And if you're studying full-time in a new location, it requires sometimes to relocate your family as well to the new location. So if this frightens you off, you usually start to look for programs that are located in the city you live in, or at least the region you live in. And the programs that you would find after some research in your region here in Central and Eastern Europe are plain vanilla MBA curricula, MBA programs. What does it mean? What is a plain vanilla curriculum? It means that these programs don't offer a certain expertise, they don't offer a certain perspective, and they don't have any values or are not mission driven, which is fine. But of course, if universities have a mission or have values, it's even better, it's added value. Another disadvantage of these local programs is that they tend to have mostly local faculty, which means the faculty comes from the city, the region, or the country the most, but it's not an international setting that you will that you would be exposed to. And the same applies to the student body. Local programs don't offer an international student body because of their format and because of their reputation, which is only attractive to people in a certain region or in a specific city. But these local programs, of course, everything has two sides, come with advantages as well. And the main advantage compared to leading business schools is, of course, the financial advantage. Compared to the leading business schools, which I already mentioned, that are about, where tuition is about 120,000 euro or even more, those local programs cost only a fraction of that, 15 to 35,000 euro, depending on the reputation of the business school, depending on the quality of the program. And another advantage is that these programs come with no work interruption, because they are taking place in the city where you live or the region where you live. So it's easier for you to combine, to juggle work life and study life and private life at the same time, because traveling would be minimized. What we do at CEU is to offer the best of two worlds. And let's talk about the most striking argument here, which is tuition. Basic tuition at CEU Executive MBA is only 29,000 euro, thanks to our financial endowment. I will talk about it later. But with our need-based scholarships, which you're applicable for if you're coming from the region where we're hosting our open days right now. For example, if you're based in Hungary, if you're based in Slovakia, the Western Balkans, Romania, you name them, you can minimize your tuition to up to, or go as down to 15,000 euro of tuition, which is a very competitive tuition compared to the leading business schools in the world. At the same time, we offer a program that allows you to stay on your job, which means there is no work interruption because of the modular format. I will talk about the modular format later. It offers a practical and flexible format, and I will talk about it in just a couple of minutes. Also, the Executive MBA at CEU is mission-driven. I will talk about the Executive MBA for the Open World philosophy later. But we do have a certain mission and we do have values that are important these days. Also, we have an international student body because of the modularity of the program. Participants can fly in, can fly out, which is the major advantage of the program. CEU is the second most international university in the world. And this is being reflected not only in the students' body, but also in the faculty body. You will be taught and you will be educated by faculty members, not only coming from around the world, basically, but coming from the best universities in the world. Our faculty members have top credentials from those leading business schools that you started your search with. And another interesting advantage is that we offer a multi-campus experience, because some of our modules take place in Vienna, some of the modules take place in Budapest, which offers you a very diverse perspective from Western and Central and Eastern Europe. So when we say world-class faculty, we really mean it. Let me give you just an overview of the faculty members that are going to teach your classes. Let's start with Professor Isosenius, with a PhD from Central Florida University. She's an expert on marketing, especially on emotional marketing. For economics, you'll be educated by Mark Kaufmann, an expert in applied theory with a PhD from Harvard University. Again, another university, another leading business school that you started your inquiry with. If you're new to finance, Joy is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students just tell us how she's unique in explaining complex financial concepts to beginners. But if you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Professor Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex financial investments with a PhD from Princeton University. The course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Miklos Koren, one of the leading scholars in the field in Europe, again with a Harvard PhD. Another expert in data, she will be teaching the data course. It's Luca Kerestesi, former expert from McKinsey. She's a data scientist, and she will teach your data class. Professor Maciej Kiszlowski, he's the faculty director of the CEU Executive MBA with a GSD degree from Yale, an MBA from INSEAD, and an MBA from Princeton, an expert in non-market strategy. For leadership, you'll have Austin, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents. He will lead the way. And for innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds the prestigious EU's Jean Monnet chair. And last but not least, Sophia Baranier with a PhD from LSE. She's an expert on the future of work. What does the topic of future of work include? It includes topics like automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. And she also will teach one of your classes. So I already introduced you to some of our faculty members, but I also want to introduce you to some of our visiting faculty members. Again, showing you a very diverse spectrum of professors from around the world, from lecturers from around the world, from the best universities out there, because we stand for academic excellence. So let me introduce you to Professor Christian Selos, an expert on innovation management from Stanford University, or Professor Miklos Savary, an expert on digital marketing from Columbia University. Professor Omar Hernandez from Berkeley has business schools also in the US. He's an expert on operations management. He just taught the most recent module in March here at CEU Executive MBA. Or Professor Hui Chen from the University of Zurich, and Professor Paula Caproni from the University of Michigan. This is just an overview of some of our faculty members. Of course, we don't have the time to show all of our faculty members and visiting faculty members now. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 9-module program, and the dates you can see on the screen right now are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and family activities based on these dates. As you can see, we have 2 modules in the first year in 2022, which is the top row. We have 4 modules in the second year, which is the center row, and 3 modules in the last year, in the third year, which gives you full flexibility and balance in your life. You might have noticed that we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like May 1st, November 1st, or August 15th, when it's easier for you to take time off your job because it's a long weekend anyways. In the summers, which is the center column, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place in Budapest. And you will have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. As you can see from the screen, the topics that we are covering in the modules are, of course, there's a financial management module, but there's also other very important modules like data-driven decision making or leading change, the bigger picture module, marketing and consumer behavior, managing operations strategically, and subtopics like entrepreneurship, innovation management, and digital transformation, just to mention some of them. And the common thread is leadership. I will talk about this common thread later. So one day, there will come the day when you finish with us and you will join the CEU alumni from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university in the world, and you can rely on an active elite network on every continent. An active elite network of more than 18,000 professionals around the world. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world, wherever you might go in the future, you will find CEU alumni to interact with and to make new friends with, or just network with. And this is a network that you can count on and one of the key assets that we have. So the key question is, how are we even able to offer such a high quality program at only 29,000 euro, excluding scholarships, of course, of tuition? And the answer lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU, to CEU's mission, by offering another $1 billion, billion with a B, in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So what does the Executive MBA for the open world mean? What makes CEU unique compared to other programs? First of all, when we talk about open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies and privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. Because diversity for us is key to creating a successful program. And for us, it's part of our DNA and not just an empty marketing catchphrase. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives and fake news that create polarization in our societies, which is visible every day on the media. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. Again, diversity is not an empty marketing catchphrase for us. It's part of our DNA, and it's a strength. The way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join this program or join programs like this. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses and resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. Whatever their profession is, whatever their background is, managers, professionals are positive or can be positive change agents. So what does the typical CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? In the current cohort, we have around 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including a minimum of 3 years of leadership/managerial experience. As you can see from the image, from the background image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate lively discussion and interaction in class. As far as education is concerned, we make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs. Because we want to take you experts in your specific field from this level of functional expertise to the strategic level. No matter what your industry is, no matter what your profession is, you have reached a level of functional expertise and you are about, or you recently moved to the strategic level, but you want to become a better leader. And we will help you achieve that goal. Also, we offer online experience. It's a hybrid program, which means every participant can choose to join online. For example, if traveling is inconvenient, if there's travel restrictions, if visa are not being issued, if there are flight restrictions, or if you're in quarantine. We've seen it all over the last 2 years. If traveling is inconvenient for you and you want to participate online, you're flexible to do so. You're free to do so. In order to provide the best learning experience for not just for online people, but also on site, we have invested heavily in studio-grade microphones, capturing not only the lecturers, but also the participants, because we want to create an atmosphere where participants engage with the lecturers and where participants engage with their fellow participants. And of course, this requires technical infrastructure. We provide large screens and high qualities in order to capture lecturers and participants for those people who are online, in order to offer the best online experience. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. As you can see from the picture on the left, this is just a screenshot from our support team meetings. You will see that there's a color code. There's people with certain colors. It helps you to allocate who's belonging to which team, which is easier for you to capture and to understand debate in class. Let me tell you something about our support teams. I already said that diversity is not an empty catchphrase for us, but it's part of our DNA. And this is also applied not only in proposition to the class, but also within the education. The support teams are not randomly picked. It's not, they're not picked by lucky numbers. We handpick the support teams in order to expose you to as much diversity as possible. You will not be placed in a support team with people coming from the same company, the same industry, the same country, or the same linguistic background, because we want to proactively expose you to diversity. Because this is where the learning experience really kicks in. When you're exposed to new learning techniques, to new decision-making processes, to new solution-making processes, this is where you will learn. If you're in a support team, if you would be in a support team with people coming from the same country or the same company, you would listen to basically the same old stories all over again, and you wouldn't learn something new. And this is our approach to expose you to a new learning experience. That's why we created these personalized virtual backgrounds showing names and the support teams that you're in and that your fellows are in. Of course, we offer high quality individual support on every level that you're with us, from the level of inquiring about the program to actually applying for the program, enrolling into the program, being in the program as a participant, or being an alumni. You deserve high quality individual support, and you will get high quality individual support. So as I already said, tuition is 29,000 euro, thanks to our financial endowment. As I said, we offer a variety of financial support with scholarships and fellowships, but let's start with basic tuition. It includes it's tuition for the whole program and includes all the credits. As mentioned before, there's an online option. If you want to participate online, you can, if traveling is inconvenient, you can flexibly choose at every module if you want to attend on-site or online. We encourage everybody to attend the modules on-site because it's just the better learning experience. And it's just more fun. Let's be honest about it. It's about spending your breaks together, spending dinner parties together, going out together, and this cannot be done online. We have, in order to defray your other costs, we have negotiated special rates at partner hotels and discount rates with partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest, ranging from the budget level to the luxury level. And we have negotiated discount rates with Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group, which will bring you to the modules in Vienna or Budapest at a lower rate. So we invite you to join the open world. The application deadline is June 12th, and the application starts online on our website. Applications are already open. I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible, even though the application deadline is June 12th. I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible because we have a first come, first served policy, which means the sooner you apply, the sooner you can reserve your study seat. And you're invited to book an individual one-on-one consultation. The link will be shared right now in the chat box. It's a one-on-one consultation with me via Zoom or MS Teams, and you will have the opportunity to discuss individual questions and optimize your application or discuss questions that are not, where today is not the best opportunity to talk about these questions like financial support if you don't want to talk about this very sensitive information. So I think it's one thing to hear about the program from us, from the program office. I think you have a feeling that we're passionate about the program, that we're committed to the program. And but I think it's another thing to hear about the program from people who are actually in the program right now, because there are no better testimonials than current participants who are actually in the program right now. And I'm very thankful, very grateful to welcome a couple of them right now at this open day. And they're going to share some insights with you and share their motivation. Let's start with Ina in Budapest. She joined our Budapest Open Day. Ina, thank you so much for coming tonight. If you could, let's start with an introduction of yourself. Could you please tell us something about yourself, like, where you're coming from professionally and what you're doing? And then let's move on to the part where you talk about your individual motivation, why you chose CEU Executive MBA back then.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Yes, great. So hi all who are here in Budapest. So my name is Ina Mancellari. I'm actually from Albanian background, but I live here in Hungary and I work in the field of energy risk management. So in the field that I have been in, we manage the risk of energy commodities. I've been in my field for more than 10 years, and essentially last year when I applied and I started the EMBA, I really wanted to, after being so long in my field, I really wanted to diversify my knowledge a bit by tapping into different fields that are otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to get insights, through my work. So that was my main motivation for starting to look at EMBAs, and I did a thorough research. I actually did, research all the schools in Europe, and the reason why I really wanted to go with CEU was, apart from all the positive factors that Thomas actually listed, which are actually very strong positive factors, I would say, at least, in your daily life, to have this modular setting. But apart from that, my main motivation was that I wanted to learn with leaders from very different backgrounds. So diversity for me was one very big key motivator, because looking at the current cohort that I'm part of, it's a fantastic cohort. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, I can say thank you, Thomas, and the whole program leadership to actually choose such a diverse cohort, because we have actually leaders from really all walks of life, all kinds of nationalities as well, but not just nationalities. Really the background of people, the industries that people come from is really, really varied. So I'm meeting leaders that otherwise probably in my daily life and in my network, I probably wouldn't have the chance to meet and talk and learn from them. So that was my main motivation for choosing this executive program.
Thank you very much. I mean, you've just been to a module just recently in March, at our March module. Could you please tell us about something about that very specific module? Like, what did you do during the module? What content did you study? What were your impressions?
Sure. So in March, we actually had a 4-day module, which was based on two main topics. One was data and one was digital transformation. What I can say about the modules or the subject itself, the lessons, they are very interactive. So it's not typical what we probably remember from university days, that you get a lecture and you listen in and you may be pitching, but not necessarily get a very interactive experience. Here it's rather a discussion on the lessons, and what I value the most is also that we work in groups. So we work in on a lot of projects with small groups that Thomas was actually showing with the colors, and we, before the module even, we meet on a regular basis online to actually work on some of these assignments that we have to decide the work, allocate the work among us, and everyone pitches in with their strength. So it's a full experience, not just on the module itself when you are there on site, but also before, because you are working on groups a lot, which also gives you opportunity to learn from other leaders and from each other, and not just when you are there, and you learn of course from these professors.
Thanks for mentioning the content. You also touched the topic of diversity. I would like to elaborate on diversity for our audience, because most people just think diversity relates to different nationalities, different passports, and that's about it. But I want to add to diversity that it's more than just nationalities. It's diversity for us means people are coming from different industries, different professions, of course, different countries. We have different gender identities, there's a huge age range in the program, which means we have people in their early 30s in the program, and we have people in the late 50s in the program, which means it's very attractive to people on the mid-level career management, and for senior managers as well. You perfectly summarized what you've experienced during the module, Ina. Thank you very much. I would like to move on to Tana, who's in Tirana right now. This is like the Eurovision Song Contest tonight. Thank you very much, Ina. Tana, if you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us, where you're coming from professionally and what's your motivation to do this Executive MBA.
Sure. Hi, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Well, currently I'm based in Tirana, Albania. And I'm working in a company in operation management field currently. And I would say that, well, I have currently a long reasons, at least, why I chose CEU. And I would like to express shortly just a few of them. And honestly, we are looking forward to join in April, which is quite soon, in a couple of weeks. Yeah, although we have, this WhatsApp group for all of us, which is really very helpful. And this is also a very good, connection for all of us, apart from, of course, official channels. And, well, the first reason, while I was Googling, to find the international EMBA, was Thomas, honestly. So don't disturb yourself, whoever is thinking now to join and search around. You just contact Thomas, and then you immediately made up your mind. It's so easy to go through it. No, really. I mean, because people, you know, time is so precious now that you really won't waste it just Googling and searching around, asking a lot of people. It's so helpful. You have just a senior program manager. You just have one main channel, and then you go and ask all your questions, starting from program professors, colleagues, until the, you know, the tuition fee, which of course is important at the end of the day. I mean, all these questions I really found to you, Thomas, and really thankful, because it just didn't waste me a lot of time directly, and it was so easily decided. Well, my first reason, honestly, was, okay, I'm living currently in Tirana, and of course, we are working with a lot of partners internationally, but honestly, I wanted to expand more my knowledge and, of course, my experience getting in touch in a wider international market. And whoever is thinking of that, I think CEU is quite, I would say, a very nice brand and located just in the middle of Europe, you know. We have Vienna, and of course we have Budapest from the other side. So even the diversity of two locations is quite interesting, because not only, of course, of the lesson and professor, but we have the opportunities after that even to visit both countries. So this is a good reason also. From the professional perspective, I would say that, okay, mostly of us are in the mid-level somehow managers, and whoever is working operationally and wants to go in a higher level of leadership, I think this would be the right place. For the knowledges as well we are getting in the class, I mean, it's not this standard, you know, lessons we are getting, but having so many diverse backgrounds, we are mostly sharing knowledge with each other. And for example, in the last digital transformation subject that we have, it was like an open area subject while we were discussing, of course, with the assignments we were doing, we were discussing and sharing knowledge, all of us. It's like an open discussion with the professor and not these standard lessons we are, you know, getting used in the other schools. And this is really interesting and very helpful. From the other part, from my, at least my personal perspective, CEU is a very good place also for getting involved in volunteer projects. I mean, it's so good, of course, for the ones that have time and wants to get involved and of course want to help. This is also a very good place of getting involved with it. But I would mention that really for me, the diversity is on top of that. Honestly, I wouldn't expect to meet so many people from so many countries, being inside the group as well, 5 of us, which of course we are learning. And also from the other part, we are sharing a lot of knowledge about culture, about country and everything after lessons. And of course here, most important is after, you know, long hours of lessons, the social life after is really important. So I really want to emphasize that this is really quite interesting and we are looking forward to it. And not only, I mean, not only from us, which we are organizing ourselves, but also, you know, from CEU representatives, all this gathering in the afternoons, the rooftop and everything, it's really, really, really very nice.
I mean, it sounds like, I mean, you know, it sounds so much fun. It is fun. But, you know, this is like where the real strength of the program starts, because it's the networking. Yes. It's to become a part of that community, to become a part of that, you know, later alumni network that you can easily reach out to. So that's why I encourage everybody to join on site. But I understand that some people just cannot travel, don't want to travel. You mentioned that the program correctly offers a Western Central European perspective and an Eastern Central European perspective, but it also adds an American perspective because it's double accredited in the US and the EU. So you will get a double degree, which is valid in both cultures in the US and the EU. So you will be a player on the global field after this program. And since leadership is a vital part of that, of the content of the modules, you will be a global leader basically, and you can lead your organization, your company, whatever your profession is. You will be a better leader after this program. Tanya, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I need to cut you off, but in view of the time and in view of Yusuf's keynote presentation that's going to start in a couple of minutes, I'm so sorry to cut you off right now because
It's okay.
I made notes of some questions from the audience that I received in direct messaging. The first question is, are there any exams? Is there a thesis? Classical question from the students, always worried about exams and writing a thesis, but I can put your mind at ease because of all the modules, only the quantitative modules, which is 1 or 2 modules, will be assessed on a classical traditional exam. And we will not be wasting your time flying you to Vienna or Budapest and have you sit in class for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to write an exam. No, you will be in the module, you will be listening to your fellows, you will be interacting with your fellows and your lecturers, you will gain very much knowledge. And once you go home to your home destination, you have a time frame of about 2 weeks when you can do the online exam at your convenience. So you can do the online exam at night, you can do it while you're at work in the office. If you have children, sometimes that's easier. You can do it on the weekends. It's up to you. Of course, once you've started the online exam, you need to finish it. All the other modules will be assessed in a very American, very progressive way, which means you will be assessed based on class participation, attendance, group presentations, stuff like that. And of course, debate entries in class. Because it's one thing that other programs don't offer, but we do, is 360-degree peer evaluation. What does it mean? You will be assessed based on your debate entries, not only by your lecturers, by your professors, you will be assessed by your fellows as well. And the same applies vice versa. You will assess your fellows in class based on their debate entries in class. So it's in your own interest to say something meaningful in class and say something important, something that adds value to the class and not just open your mouth to say something. As far as the thesis is concerned, again, we have this approach that we don't want to waste your time. We know that executives don't have much time at their hands. So we're not going to waste your time after the modules that you will sit in, libraries doing research for weeks and months, writing a paper, a thesis, which will dust in a bookshelf. No, you will be working on a capstone project, which will be basically you will be working on the capstone project for the 2 years of the program. And the capstone project, the purpose of the capstone project is to deal with a problem, with an issue, with a situation of your individual professional life. So the aim is to put the theory that you learn at CEU into practice, into your practice, to resolve an issue of your professional life. It cannot be any more practical than that if I'm asked. Another question is, what are the application requirements? What does the application procedure look like? The application requirements are pretty straightforward. You can see them on our website. We are looking for candidates with at least 8 years of work experience, of which 3 years of leadership experience, any kind of leadership experience, and a university diploma. If you do not meet one of these criteria, we can make exceptions, yes. But of course, it's up to you to make a case and argue why you would still be eligible for this program. So you would, in your motivation letter, you would need to tell us, even without a university diploma, why you'd be still eligible for the Executive MBA, because we can make exceptions. Other documents that are needed in the application process are a CV and a motivation letter. I don't think that's going to be a problem for you to come up with these documents. We don't require a GMAT test for the application. As far as the procedure is concerned, you will start and finish your application on a website. It's a traditional online application portal where you create a profile, you enter some personal data, you upload some documents, and once you have submitted your application, we will revise it, check it for completeness and correctness. You will have the opportunity to hand in missing documents, for example, and assuming that you meet all the formal criteria, you will be invited to an interview with one of our faculty members. And based on that interview, you will be, your application will be presented to an admission committee because we are handpicking our participants. As far as the interview is concerned, we are fully transparent because we have published the questions that we are going to ask in the interview on our website. So you will have the opportunity to check those questions and get a sense, get a feeling of where are my strengths, where are my weaknesses in the interview, and you can prepare better with you. We are not going to play mind games during the interview. We're not going to ask you stupid questions like, if you were a color, which color would you be? We only have 45 minutes, and we use that time wisely in order to get to know you and your motivation. So it's only a couple of weeks from the point, once you have submitted your application to an admission decision, it only takes very few couple of weeks until you have a decision. Because again, we know you don't have much time at your hands and you want a decision promptly, and we can assure you to get that decision promptly. Another question is, and then I'm going to move on to the academic part of this of tonight, but allow me the last question, which is very important. The question, do we offer financial support in order to defray the tuition of 29,000 euro? Yes, yes, yes. We offer a variety of financial support. We offer the Open World Scholarship. We offer need-based scholarships, which are non-competitive and only take into consideration your income in the country of residence. And we have empowerment fellowships, which have the aim to empower people of our society which are underrepresented on the level, on the business level, on the leadership level in society, in business and politics. For example, for businesswomen, for LGBTIQ managers, for professionals with a disability. We have a Western Balkans fellowship. We have diversity fellowships in France and the UK. There's so many of them. Please reach out to me if you're interested in those scholarships and fellowships. Please feel free to reach out to me and book a one-on-one consultation, and I would be happy to advise you and give you individual advice on the best option for you on financial support. So without further ado, sorry for being 5 minutes late. I would like to move on to the academic highlight of tonight, which is the lecture on Cold War 2.0, how will it affect our business, by Professor Yusuf Akbar. Professor Yusuf Akbar is an associate professor of strategy at CEU. He has published over 40 journal articles, 4 books, and numerous contributions to academic and professional research in strategy and international business. He's the founding editor of the International Journal of Emerging Markets and an advisor to governmental authorities, and his consulting and professional references include Citibank, Deutsche Telekom, Siemens, Texas Instruments, and Toyota. Thank you very much, Yusuf, for joining us tonight. The floor is yours, finally.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, I'm sure many of us are very deeply impacted and curious about what is going to happen as this Russian war in the Ukraine proceeds. You know, it's becoming quite clear that what's happening currently is going to lead to a sea change in the way the international economy and the way multinational firms operate in the years ahead. So I think here's the big picture. I think first of all, the Russian invasion of Ukraine effectively brings to an end that period of post-Soviet economic affairs after 1989. So the so-called peace dividend, you know, the idea that essentially without a significant division of the world into sort of nominally free market versus planned economy groupings, that period is now effectively over. And I think what we're seeing here is politics over markets, which, you know, I think is part of a much broader deglobalization process that's taking place. Obviously, the pandemic has had its own impact, but I think what we're seeing in the world's reaction to the Russian invasion of Ukraine is probably more serious than 9/11 in terms of the way the world economy is going to function in the years ahead, and is probably going to have a much longer impact on the world economy than the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, effectively, economic sanctions against Russia are functionally permanent. Most of the major governments who are supporting Ukraine, that obviously includes the NATO member states, have basically said in recent pronouncements in the last couple of days that the only way economic sanctions against Russia will be lifted is if every Russian military asset is removed from Ukraine. So I think we can assume that economic sanctions against Russia are basically permanent unless something dramatic happens. If you look at the new German Chancellor pledging to spend 2% of German GDP on defense spending, as we all know, the US is the world's biggest spender on defense. This is a huge deal. I mean, we're talking about 100 billion euros a year, which is an extraordinarily large amount of money. The Germans are now recognizing that the Nord Stream project was a strategic error because it created further dependence on Russian energy supplies. And likewise, you know, back a few years, the decision to end the Nabucco project, which was a gas line project aimed at taking gas from Azerbaijan through Turkey to the European Union, and the ending of that project was also a similar error. I think Mario Draghi, the Prime Minister of Italy, is having his second whatever it takes moment. Those of you may remember at the height of the Euro debt crisis with Greece and so on. Mario Draghi was then the president of the European Central Bank, and he very famously in an August press conference said the European Union will do whatever it takes to save the euro, and that changed the sentiment dramatically. He became known as Super Mario. So I think we're talking about Super Mario 2, because, I mean, don't forget, as I'll explain in more detail, Italy has a lot to lose from decoupling the Italian economy from Russia, and I'll come back to that. I think another unknown question is whether or not this crisis will speed up transition to a clean energy environment, which again would have huge impacts on the way economies function and firms conduct their strategies. My sense at this stage is that continental Europeans are probably going to speed up that process, while the US, I think, is probably going to slow down, in the sense I think the US is now going to sort of depend even more on domestic sources of fossil fuels, because some of you may know that the US is a net exporter of fossil fuels. And I think China will continue on its pathway towards net zero, which, is a faltering process, but is slowly but surely headed in that direction. Whether it's enough, quickly enough, that's a debate for another presentation, but it's certainly continuing. So let's talk about this decoupling of the Russian economy from the rest of the world. I mean, this is a truly dramatic development. Approximately, as of the start of this week, approximately 5,000 foreign companies have pulled out of Russia, either closing down their operations or suspending their operations. And of course, with these, functionally permanent sanctions against Russia, that's a huge deal. As many of you may know, the Russian economy, is heavily dependent upon the exportation of raw materials, and it relies very heavily on inward foreign direct investment in services, particular business to consumer services, but also in technology sectors, IT, engineering, and the like. And I think there's an unanswered question here, which is the Sinification of the Russian economy. Because, of course, if 5,000 Western companies pull out of Russia, there's a vacuum that's going to be created. And I think an unanswered question at this stage is, how far are Chinese firms going to sort of replace European and American firms in Russia, given the fact that, you know, the Kremlin are going to start looking for alternative sources of technology and inward foreign direct investment that they've lost because of the pullout of the companies. And, you know, and I think China here, you know, as with many things in terms of its foreign and economic policy, is playing the long game. They've effectively captured economically the Far Eastern economy of Russia. So we're talking, you know, sort of Vladivostok, Far Eastern Siberia, Kamchatka, and that part of Russia. And so it's clearly at this stage not in the interest of China's economy for the Chinese government to take sides against Russia. And I think they kind of realize that with the developments that we're seeing, with the kind of decoupling of the Russian economy from the developed world, China is very well placed to kind of pick up the slack. And likewise, you know, the slow but progressive sort of ending of European dependence on Russian energy imports means that Russia is going to have to pivot to China as well. But I think, you know, the first thing is, of course, the infrastructure is not there yet. So a significant investment in infrastructure is going to be required to enable Russia to sort of export energy, oil and gas in particular, to China. And of course, it's going to place China in a very weak negotiating position in terms of the price that it's going to be able to negotiate with the Chinese government on receiving energy imports. And as European countries continue to reduce their dependence on Russian gas, this pressure will grow even further for Gazprom. I think if we look at it in the European context, if I could for just a moment, I think it's very important to emphasize that different European countries have very different interests and face different impacts of the decoupling of the Russian economy from the European economy. So, you know, I can't mention all European countries here, so I do apologize if, you know, if your country hasn't been mentioned here today. It's not that it's not important. I just thought I would give us a sort of overview here. I mean, I think if you look at France and the UK, from an energy perspective, they're not so impacted by ending economic relations with Russia. So France relies heavily upon the generation of electricity from nuclear power. And of course, the UK, of course, relies upon North Sea gas imports. So they're not so impacted. I do think there are a couple of exceptions which are worth noting. Of course, the French luxury sector, which relies heavily upon wealthy Russians buying that. And of course, in the UK, I think the London property market is going to be significantly impacted by these economic sanctions. It's going to be much, much harder for wealthy Russians to get their wealth out of Russia and place it in the UK property market. And of course, the UK in the last decade or so has basically become the playground for wealthy Russians' children to get education at elite private schools and British universities. And of course, that's going to become that will have a significant impact on the privileged private education sector in British universities. The Dutch, the Belgians, and the Spanish really have very little to oppose, little to lose from opposing Russia. Their dependence on Russian energy is not significant. By contrast, if I can think of 3 countries from Western Europe that are extremely dependent upon Russian energy, it's Germany, Italy, and Austria. Austria gets around 80% of its natural gas from Russia. Italy is in the high 50s or so. Germany's in the mid 40s. So one of the big questions, if there is to be another round of sanctions against Russia, is whether or not these 3 countries are going to be able to sort of bite the bullet and reduce or eliminate imports of gas from Russia. Both Germany and Austria have actually began the process of a state of energy emergency. So both countries last week introduced stage 1, which is where they're going to require companies to reduce their energy usage in order to preserve energy for domestic use in the countries. I think Finland and Sweden are moving towards a more Russophobic stance. Neither countries are members of NATO. Both have begun discussions about joining NATO. And I think it's going to be very hard for companies there to operate in Russia. I think Hungary and Bulgaria, largely due to the political and business elites of those countries, have very close linkages to Russia. Here we're talking about sort of compromat, which maybe the Russians have on the Hungarian and Bulgarian political elites. Of course, incredible high levels of corruption in both countries, and I think it leaves leaders in these countries with a difficult polarization of the population, right? Similar to sort of Ukraine before 2014. And then last but not least, Poland and the Baltics see this situation as an existential threat. Lithuania has already announced that it's no longer going to import gas from Russia. Other Baltic states will probably follow suit, and Poland is calling for a similar thing at the EU level. So I think they very much see total economic isolation for Russia as the solution moving forward. Who are the winners from this scenario? I think Turkey here plays a vital role as an honest broker. You probably have seen in the newspapers and online recently, summits that have taken place in Istanbul between the Ukrainian representatives and the Russian representatives. And I think Turkish businesses will also probably gain by picking up some of the slack left behind European business departure from Russia. I'm thinking about construction sector, where Turkey has some significant construction firms. Tourism, getting to Europe for vacation is going to be very hard now for Russians. So going on vacation to Turkey, I think, is probably going to increase. And other sectors, such as the furniture sector, which Russia has traditionally been an important market for Italian furniture manufacturers, that's obviously now over. So clearly, Turkish firms who produce competing products have an opportunity there. I think further afield, United Arab Emirates is probably going to begin to replace some European tax havens, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Monaco, and also the UK. I think it may become a new playground for Russian oligarchic wealth. I think the growth of offshore accounts in the UAE is going to grow. One factor that we might want to consider sort of moving forward is, whether the United States, which is a close ally of the United Arab Emirates, will begin to put pressure on the UAE to not allow that kind of inflow of wealth from Russia. It's worth noting that the American government did ask the UAE, Abu Dhabi in particular, which is the large oil exporter from the UAE, to increase supply of oil because of rising prices, and the UAE actually refused to do so. So that's just perhaps a sign. And as I mentioned before, China is clearly in pole position to gain substantially from Russia's economic isolation from the developed world. So what does this mean for strategies for companies? I mean, I think we're going to see, as this decoupling process goes forward, we're going to see what we call friend sourcing. So, Russia's going to begin to increase its sourcing from countries that are allied or not, who are not openly hostile. So China, India, and Turkey are three countries that obviously come to mind in that situation. And I think, as part of a broader trend of sort of decoupling with China, as well as Russia, I think the European Union and the US are going to sort of increasingly begin to try and source perhaps more locally and with other Asian countries moving forward. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that, while Russia is a big country militarily, but we've seen how poor their actual military is when it comes to a fight against a determined army, such as the Ukrainian army. Its total GDP is similar to Italy, and its per capita GDP is now less than China. So I think Russia, even before the invasion began, was a declining power economically, and this war will speed up Russia's decline even further. I haven't even mentioned up until now the demographic situation in Russia, which is absolutely horrific. It has one of the fastest aging populations in the world. I think one way to think about the impact on the strategies moving forward is a lot of this impact is going to sort of vary sector by sector. I think education, tourism, financial services, firms are going to have to find a way to make up for the losses of the Russian market. And I think likewise, Russian firms are going to have to sort of, find new technologies to keep them going. I'll give you one sort of data point to support this. When sanctions were imposed on Russia at the start of the invasion, one of the first sanctions was to ban flights from Russia to pretty much the whole of the EU, North America. So most of the major aviation markets, with the exception of China, and the airline leasing companies that provide jets to Aeroflot, the state Russian airline, sent out messages to all airports in the world that where the sanctions were enforced to seize any leased aircraft which are operated by Aeroflot, which was why the Russian government decided to say that they're only going to fly domestically into Belarus, because they don't want those planes to be seized outside of those two countries. And of course, the repair situation for these aircraft is going to become severe probably 6 months down the road, because they're going to run out of spare parts to service their fleet, which is almost exclusively, with the exception of some of the Russian Sukhoi jets, reliant heavily on Boeing and Airbus fleet. There's not much evidence at this stage that Russian firms have the capabilities to replace foreign investment in the short to mid-term. So unless something dramatic happens and the technology capacities of Russian firms increases, it's likely to be the case that Russia, in a similar way to the Soviet Union was in the 1960s and 70s, is essentially going to be cut off from access to leading technologies. And I'll finish up by sort of focusing on this final question. Will Chinese firms fill the void caused by economic sanctions? Thanks very much. Open for questions. Thank you.
It was quite interesting. I mean, what we are seeing happening nowadays, to hear from the professor. But I don't see any question from the local team here. I'm seeing also in the...
Which is a compliment, that everything was so clearly communicated by Yusuf. I mean, it was so easy to follow his conclusions.
As usual, also in class.
Yeah. I mean, just one comment from my side. I think you did not mention India as much as you did. I mean, China is like the elephant in the room. I mean, it's clear how China is playing right now. But I mean, India at the moment, with a right-wing government, with a populist government within or authoritarian government right now, negotiated a discount for, I think it's crude oil or gas from Russia. So I think did they pick sides? What do you think? Or is it just business for them?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that, Thomas. So I would say that Russia, the Kremlin is an incredibly weak position vis-a-vis India and China. That's the first thing I'd say. I can't see, Indian firms being able as easily as Chinese firms to fill the void. What is important to note, of course, is that India and Russia have had, and back to Soviet times, have had very strong relationships in the military field. So a lot of Indian military technology is Russian technology. So irrespective of Modi's politics, it's still likely that it would be difficult for the Indians to basically just, start a fight with Russia over this because of their dependence on technology. These things, as your question implies, are always so interdependent and complex. I mean, my sense was if Trump had got himself reelected, there was evidence in the last couple of years of the Trump administration that there was a kind of rapprochement between Washington and Delhi. And you could have seen perhaps the Indians becoming more dependent on American military technology. But of course, with the Biden administration coming in, that's been less likely, at least for this 4-year term. Who knows what's coming in the future? I think it's also finally worth mentioning, that in a broader historical context, India was the leader of the non-aligned movement during the Cold War. So Indira Gandhi very much, alongside Yugoslavia, very much kind of led that non-aligned process. So it's not surprising for me that India, in terms of its foreign policy traditions, has also decided to kind of not take sides in this conflict.
And I've received a question via direct messaging. What about the effectiveness of sanctions? That, I mean, we can basically read every day in the newspapers that supposedly the sanctions don't work because Russia is, making so much money at the moment because of the exchange rate for oil and gas. What do you think?
Yeah. So the analogy is the following. I don't get a six-pack muscles if I go to the gym once. Sanctions take a very long time to have an impact. And what we know that in the short term is typically that sanctions actually strengthen the leaders of countries that are facing sanctions. So, if you look at what we did in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, 10 years of sanctions actually strengthened his position, because there tends to be a kind of rallying to the flag effect among the populations. And so I think in the short term, it's probably, the results will not be in the short term, let me put it that way. This is not a nice thing to say, but I think NATO is now looking for a protracted, relatively controllable long-term war in Ukraine, which uses up significant amounts of Russian resources to buy NATO time and NATO member states to begin the pivot away from Russian energy. So I think actually Joe Biden, when he gave his speech in Warsaw a few weeks ago, gave it away when he said, this guy shouldn't be in power. I mean, I think this is a long-term strategy of regime change, but it may not happen through, well, I hope to God it doesn't happen through a direct military confrontation between NATO and Russia, but it's probably going to happen through economic sanctions. And again, as a final thought, if you look at sort of Russian political and economic history in a longer term, so last couple of 100 years, Russian politics has been sort of marked by periods of relative liberalization and opening to the West, followed by quite severe clampdowns, a pretty nasty revolution, a reopening, a clampdown, and then a rather nasty revolution. So, what was it Mark Twain said? History doesn't repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. We may see a similar event, but sanctions aren't going to have an effect for the next year, I would say. You're looking at 2-3 years down the road.
And I mean, we do have some examples for sanctions that did or did not work with Iraq and Iran. So I think you made a good point here and very good final remarks. In view of the time, thank you very much, Yusuf, for your expertise, for sharing your sharing your expertise with us for this keynote presentation. If you want to gain more insight like this from Yusuf or other lecturers, feel free to join our program and apply for the Executive MBA, and you can interact with Yusuf and other lecturers in class about very provocative topics and very hot topics, as long as everything is based on arguments and facts, of course. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you for the attendees joining us on Zoom. Thank you for the people in Tirana and here in Zagreb. The Budapest people are happy to enjoy now a tour and a reception after this open day. So enjoy your evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.